So talk to us about preservation.
In our school libraries, we don't really do a lot of preservation of our materials beyond just simple repair. Is that where you're?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll do simple repairs. Rarely do we send something to a bindery. Most of what we have, when it gets to that point, we are looking for something new to replace it with, unless it was a highly circulated thing, or it's used a lot within instruction. And then if we can't purchase another copy of it, then we'll send it off to a bindery. But for the most part, the librarians and their assistants do the repair of their own materials as they go.
Okay. You talked a little bit about intellectual freedom earlier. So talk to us, how do you maintain a level of intellectual freedom?
Well, and I think I'm gonna actually talk on that topic on two different levels. The first level is going to be in how our materials are viewed and what we offer to our customers and our students, is that it needs to be well balanced. And we believe everyone should have a voice, but just because it may not be right for your child, you don't have the right to tell another parent's child that they can't read it. So that's the viewpoint that we come from, is that you can definitely have a chat with your child and determine what is or is not appropriate for your family, but you can't do that for everyone else. So your views don't necessarily equal to everyone else's in the community, and that we're a diverse area. So we have a wide range of views. So within that view of intellectual freedom is that providing access to those materials that they may be exploring or whatever, we need to have them there. We also, our policy is that librarians do not tell a student, no, they can't check that out. Meaning, if a child is determined that that's what they want. Now, what I would do as a librarian is, when I'd have that first grader coming up with a chapter book this thick, I would ask them some questions, and I would let them discover that it wasn't right for them. But if they had it in their mind they wanted that, they could walk out of that library with that book. But when they bring out that book like this, I would say, now let's think about the 5-finger rule. Can you read an entire page without having 5 fingers come up? And if they say no,
When
then
5 fingers come up.
for each time that they can't read a word, they put up a finger. So if there's 5 words on a page, chances are it's going to be too difficult for them. But at times they'll say, but my brother's going to read it to me. Okay, it's part of that interview process, and that's perfectly fine. If it's something that may have a more mature theme in it, maybe we bought it for our advanced 5th graders. That was the audience that we had intended when we made the purchase. And it's a 2nd grader or a 3rd grader that, yes, they can read it, but the content was really for an older grade. We would have a conversation of, remember at the beginning of the year we talked about how just because you can read a book, it may not be the right book for you. And we talk about choosing that right book. And this book here was really written for a 5th grader. I think you would probably really enjoy it much more when you get to 5th grade. And usually they would agree, and they really understood where I was going and what I was talking about. So we train our librarians in how to have those conversations with students. At the same time, at points we have parents come in, I don't want my child to check out any Harry Potter books. And our response to that parent is, then you need to communicate that with your child, because we don't have the ability to do that. It could be a day that I'm out and a substitute librarian may be in here, and they may not know that your child can't check out Harry Potter. So I can't make that guarantee that 100% of the time that we can do that. I said, but that's a conversation between you and your child. And so we don't place any restrictions in our catalog, in our circulation system with their names. Let me say, our librarians aren't supposed to be doing that. Whether that's being realized 100%, I can't be sure. At points in time, I have heard a rumor, and I then communicate with the librarian that we don't do that. And so, and they may say, well, but this was one special case. But my feeling is it needs to be consistent, because if a parent at this school talks to a parent at that school and they say, well, my child's library, they can do this, then the other librarian is looking like they're just not wanting to be helpful. Where really what we're doing is we're trying to establish that it's up to the reader to decide what they want to read. Unless a parent objects to it, but that's conversation between the parent and the child. Just as if they're watching TV. A child knows which TV programs they can and cannot watch. The parent has communicated that with their child. And that's the same type of communication that we're expecting parents to have with types of books as well. I guess the other side of intellectual freedom is property rights. Are we allowing, it's the content that we're choosing, are we acquiring it ethically? Are we using those resources ethically? And sometimes it's a struggle, especially when you talk about copyright and licensing, because in the school context we have a little more freedom because we're an education institution. But yet, when it comes to licensing, it's actually a contract, and copyright at that point it's thrown out. We don't follow copyright at that point. We have to follow the license because it's a signed contract. So I would say that's one of those murky areas. But once again, we enter those licenses in order to provide a broader span of content for our users.
Okay. One of the things I'm wondering, with the two types of libraries, what's the funding?
Okay.
Like?
The way that we do it, from each year we invoice the city for the personnel, because they're all employees of the school district. We invoice them for the electricity used in the building beyond school hours, and we charge the city for security and for any other staff, whether it's professional or assistants, that are dedicated toward public work. But whether they're a school librarian or a city-funded librarian, everyone shares in all the duties. When a customer comes up to the counter, they don't know which funding source that librarian comes from, because everyone shares in the work, and it's ran as one cohesive unit, so they're seamless. So everyone has training on all the different types of materials and systems used by both libraries. The book budget, though, is done a little differently, because we create our collection, they create their collection, and so there's two different groups doing collection development for these two libraries. And what we've done is we've provided them with our MARC records so that so they know what's in our collection, and we've asked for theirs so we know what's in their collection. So that way, when we're purchasing things, we're not